There was no sound from Jim Nabors for many years. He's now saying names that Hollywood always tries to hide. Stars who are at the top of their game but live like crooks behind the scenes. Because they love the wrong person. The names are slowly being revealed. That's not all they are. They are hurt by a society that thinks the truth is dangerous. Nabors finally talks about what he saw with his own eyes. The secrets, the fears, and the letters that were kept secret. It's true what they say. The people involved in this stay quiet about it until they are asked to. Jim Nabors was born in 1930 in Sylacauga, Alabama. At that time, the town didn't have any fame, it was just full of mills, red dust, and the harsh conditions of the American South. He was the youngest of two working-class kids and had weak bones and asthma attacks all the time as a child. Oh, my dad. He avoided going outside most of the time and stayed inside most of the time, listening to the radio and singing as his only release. Nearby moved to California in the mid-1950s after getting his business administration degree from the University of Alabama. NBC hired him to cut movies, and he also played in small clubs in Santa Monica. Not for fame, but just for the thrill of living, he looked for chances to be on stage in his free time. Ernie Ford from Tennessee. Ernie Ford. It didn't take him long to become famous for his strong baritone voice and natural ability to make people laugh. The big break came in 1962, when Nabors was trying out at a small club and Andy Griffith saw them. Griffith liked him so much that he agreed to give him the part of Gomer Pyle on the Andy Griffith Show. At first, Nabors was just a minor character, but his innocent and funny honesty quickly won over the public. People saw him and called him America's most honest sailor. Hey, Sergeant Pyle, you don't need to tell me what I see. I know what I see. One of the most famous sitcoms on CBS from 1964 to 1969 was Gomer Pyle USMC, which was based off of the character Gomer. Nabors went from being a little-known worker to a national TV star. He was in every newspaper, on music shows, and getting letters from fans all over the country all the time. From 1965 on, he started putting out records of music. Nabors put out more than 28 records over the course of his career. He sang love songs, hymns, and folk songs with a deep voice that was praised for its technique. Some of his best-known songs, like The Impossible Dream and You'll Never Walk Alone, made him seem like he had the best voice in America. As Nabors became more famous, Hollywood started to see him as the perfect Southerner, a kind, religious, patriotic, and honest American guy. At the time, newspaper stories often talked about his private life, saying that he had never been in trouble for dating anyone in public. It wasn't a mistake. Back then, keeping quiet was a way to stay alive. Nabors knew what could ruin a career in the stifling entertainment business that controlled every aspect of a star's look. In the 1970s, there was a story going around that Jim Nabors and Rock Hudson got married at a party put on by friends. The news started out as a joke among friends, but it was quickly picked up by newspapers, which meant that neither actor could do any events with the other for a long time. After that, Nabors avoided Hudson in public, not because they had a problem, but because they both knew that a bad handshake could be used as proof by the press. Since the mid-1970s, he had been seeing fireman Stan Cadwallader as a partner behind the scenes. They lived together in Hawaii, far from all the fuss in Hollywood. After 38 years together, Nabors didn't get married to Cadwallader until 2013. In a place where people had lived in fear their whole lives, he made a quiet but important move. In the middle of the 20th century, Hollywood was not only a place where movies were made, but also a huge machine that made pictures of people. People who were pushed to fame had to sign a secret deal that was never written down or recorded, but it was always there. Keep up a perfect image that fits with what people want and especially don't show any signs that were morally wrong at that time. For gay people, quitting their job over a moment of carelessness meant the end of their career. There were laws called the Hays Code from 1930 to 1968 that made it illegal to show any kind of moral deviation on TV. Homosexuality was specifically not allowed. But its effects didn't end with the movies they showed. It went into the actors' real lives. People thought that a star was not what they seemed to be, which put the studio's money at risk. So, big production companies took full control of their public pictures by making fake biographies, setting up public dates, and, if necessary, setting up marriages to avoid scandal. In order to get photo ops, actors had to take pictures of themselves eating out, holding hands with co-stars of the opposite sex, and looking cute on magazine covers. Magazines like Photoplay and Modern Screen were given these pictures on purpose. Everything had to be planned, from private nights to love affairs, in order to keep up the star myth. Those who didn't follow the rules were fired by the company or, worse, became stories in tabloids. In the 1950s, Confidential was one of the most infamous magazines because it was known for leaking rumors about famous people. In 1955, there were rumors that Hudson was gay, but his director, Henry Wilson, broke the rumors by giving Hudson another star story. Studios and newspapers stayed in touch with each other. News wasn't spread, it was bought and sold. The Lavender Scare happened at the same time as McCarthy's battle against communists. A number of government workers were fired because they were thought to be gay. People saw homosexuality as both a moral problem and a sign of bad government that put the country at risk. The entertainment business, which was already under a lot of pressure from the people and the government, was directly affected by this climate of suspicion. Not only did the press watch the actors, but so did control groups. It's possible for a private meeting to turn into a charge. At that time, there was an informal but useful privacy network for gay artists. People like Scotty Bowers, who used to be in the Marines and now works as a backroom manager for many stars, set up secret meetings for them so they could find love without worrying about being found out. Bowers writes in his autobiography, Full Service, about how he connected famous stars in ways that the media didn't expect. The entertainment business doesn't protect them if something happens, even though the secret is only brief. When there is a scandal, the company is ready to cut the cord, say they are sorry, blame the actor, and say they have broken the public's trust. The results are not only losing your job, but also not being able to get any acting jobs in the future. If someone is called gay, they won't be able to play a leading man, get sponsored, or be on popular TV shows. Being quiet became a way to stay alive. They had two lives going at the same time, one for other people and one for themselves. Some people chose to live by themselves. Others got married just for show to make people happy. Some people left their homes and went to Hawaii or Europe to find freedom. All of them knew, though, that they had to be very quiet if they wanted to stay alive in Hollywood. Even Jim Nabors, who was very loyal to his party and had never been in trouble, felt this pressure. He lived with Stan Kidwalader for decades without telling anyone about it. This shows how tightly the industry was controlled at the time. It wasn't a choice to keep quiet. Because of it, they didn't fall down. It wasn't about rules behind the scenes. It was about loyalty, friendship, and the quiet bonds between people who knew each other but never told anyone else. What the stars mean. During Jim Nabors' time in Hollywood, he was both professionally successful and able to see many of his co-workers balancing between fame and who they really were. It was friends, and it was sure of itself. They all dealt with it in different ways, but they all had to deal with the same truth. If they wanted to keep being in front of the camera, they had to hide the truth. The first name Jim used was Rock Hudson. In 1962, they met for the first time at a charity event. People who lived nearby remember Hudson as a quiet, smart, and private person. The press called him the perfect gentleman, but people who knew him well knew he was very lonely. Hudson once told a group of people at a work party, "I'm tired of pretending. But everything would go away if I were real." Nabors didn't offer any advice. He didn't say anything because he knew how she felt. Hudson's relationships were never made public, but people who worked closely with him knew about them. Lee Garlington, Hudson's longtime boyfriend, once said that they had to enter movie houses through the back doors so no one would see them together. The notes by Scotty Bowers also show that Hudson often used his network of gas stations to find sexual partners in secret. When Hudson's sexuality was almost revealed in Confidential in 1955, Universal Studios and his agent Henry Wilson planned to draw attention away from him by having an affair with his secretary, Phyllis Gates, who would later marry him. One more example was Raymond Burr. People have always thought of him as the cool and silent Perry Mason, but in real life, Burr had a private life with his longtime partner, Robert Benitez. For over 30 years. People in the news talked about Benitez as an old friend or a fellow producer. Nabors once got a letter from Burr that said, "You can be yourself when you sing on stage. I can't. I have to maintain an image all my life." Burr also whispered to Nabors at a rap party. "Gummer, some parts you have to play for life." People in the neighborhood thought it was a confession. Jim Nabors was deeply moved by Tab Hunter's story. Hunter, who was the face of Hollywood in the 1950s, was once seen as the perfect man. But there was another truth behind the pictures with Natalie Wood. In 1958, Hunter told one of his neighbors, "I'm in love, Jim, but if anyone finds out who I'm in love with, I'm done." Tony Perkins was that person. Because of an awkward picture of them together, their relationship was once on the verge of ending. Hunter later said in his 2005 autobiography, Hunter Confidential, that he was dating Perkins. Confidential often called the events at Hunter's house suspicious pajama parties, which made people in the Hollywood press suspicious. As the controversy grew, Hunter was pushed by the studio to go on a public date with Debbie Reynolds to make everyone happy. Anthony Perkins, who was famous for playing Norman Bates in Psycho, felt the pressure too. He was smart and talented, but he never interacted with the public. His neighbors said he saw the whole world through his eyes but never let anyone else see it. But his love for men. In an effort to fit in with society, Perkins married Barry Berenson and had 2 kids. On the other hand, Perkins wrote in Neighbors' personal notes, "I am playing roles I don't believe in, both on screen and off. You are braver than I am." Perkins died in 1992 of complications from AIDS. Hudson had died 7 years before. People were shocked by both deaths. The media had to admit that Hollywood had been too quiet about a big problem for too long, and that many of the people who were sick were people who the business had used and never protected. News stories, rumors, and hiding things. It's not just about you when you hide the truth. It's planned, protected by paperwork, lies, and a media setup that works closely with the studios. Jim Nabors saw not only the secret lives, but also the whole system that keeps the cover up. Every article, interview, and picture that gets printed is carefully planned to protect the only thing that studios care about, making money off of the perfect image. The story of Rock Hudson is one of the best-known cases. In the mid-1950s, reports spread that he was gay, and Confidential magazine was getting ready to print and expose. To stop this from happening, Henry Wilson, an agency whose clients included young, good-looking actors who were in danger, gave the editor information about another star in exchange for his silence. The next step was to set up a wedding with Wilson's personal maid, Phyllis Gates. People took pictures and wrote about the wedding, but it only lasted 3 years. That was about the last time Hudson talked about it. A similar plan was used against Tab Hunter. As soon as Confidential said they would print that he had a night party with gay friends at his house, Warner Brothers set up a series of photos of him with Natalie Wood, who was also being promoted by the company. Fan magazines had a bunch of stories about Tab and Natalie going on a date under the moonlight. People tried to shut down the rumors, but everyone knew that the real reason for the picture shoot wasn't romance, but to protect their image. People thought less of Raymond Burr because he didn't have a wife or kids, girlfriends, or an easy personal life story to share. Universal Studios made up a story about a son who died of illness and his dead wife to deal with it. There wasn't even a death document or any other proof. Just a few lines in a biography that was sent to the press. But the news didn't look into it as much as they do now. People believed what was written, and the story stuck around for decades. The people in charge of Jim Nabors also told him to have dinner with an actress a few times a month to give the public the impression that he was sexually stable. He didn't do it because he was tougher than other people, but because he thought it would make things worse. After that, a joke among friends spread that Nabors was married to Rock Hudson. A magazine thought it was real news, even though it was just a joke. Because of this, they couldn't show together for many years to protect their reputations. Many of the studio's internal documents have been made public or used in academic papers, which shows how careful the method was. PR people and directors met to talk about more than just movies. They also talked about how actors lived their lives. They kept track of where they went, who their close friends were, and even waiters they knew. The company would step in if there were signs that something wasn't right. Some players were told to move to a different area to stay away from creepy neighbors. A lot of people were given unofficial curfews. A 1958 clipping from Confidential was saved by Nabors. It said that Tab Hunter was having a strange pajama party. It was a vague phrase, but it made me wonder. A friend kept a small notebook where he wrote about a 1966 dinner with Rock Hudson. He got home late and said that someone had been following him for days. Hudson thought that the studio was not trusting of his connection. His only wish was to hide in Europe, where no one would know about it. In 1970, Raymond Burr wrote to people in his area. "Bob and I saw your show. Had a great time laughing. Then I thought, you can be yourself on stage." Me? I'm still Perry Mason even if I'm not sitting in a suit. Then Anthony Perkins wrote to his neighbors in another letter, "I'm playing roles I don't believe in, both on screen and in real life. You're braver than I am. I just hide it." When Rock Hudson told the press in 1985 that he had HIV, it made a huge splash. There was no way to hide. Many people saw one of America's biggest male stars as a strong role model. He was now Hollywood's first AIDS face. The business world could no longer pretend at that point. The people and the press knew Hudson was gay, even though he never said it out loud. No longer was his sexuality the problem, it was the fact that the business world had been quiet for so long. Hudson died not long after the news came out. All over the U.S., people became more aware of AIDS, which made governments and media outlets change how they reported on and helped sufferers. It was a turning point that Hollywood could never go back to. Over time, names that had been hidden and connections that had been erased from records were slowly brought back to life. At many memorials, people who used to be best friends were finally honored as partners, as real partners. This was something that many people, like Jim Nabors, had been waiting their whole lives for. Anthony Perkins died of AIDS effects in 1992, not long after Hudson. The press wasn't as shocked as they had been before, but they still didn't want to talk about what he had been through. Some of Perkins's close friends and former co-workers held a secret memorial service where people told more honest personal stories than ever. In his 2012 autobiography, Full Service, Scotty Bowers caused a public uproar by listing the names of the men he had set up dates with in secret, including Hudson, Cary Grant, and Spencer Tracy. Some people told him he was wrong for busting the myth, but Bowers claimed he was actually restoring history. Hollywood did everything it could to hide this past. From afar, Jim Nabors has seen all of these changes. In 2013, after 38 years together, he chose to legally marry Stan Cadwallader. He didn't hold a press conference or make a big deal about it. It was hidden but seen by many. What would have ended his career 30 years ago is now a sign of welcome. Nabors has retired and is now living in Hawaii. But his action hits home with LGBTQ+ people because it ends a period of peace and starts a new one. One that has a name, is legal, and tells the truth. The business world didn't change quickly. When the Hays Code was thrown out in 1968, it was the beginning of content freedom. Though, it wasn't until the Stonewall riots in 1969 that the LGBTQ+ community really started to band together and fight. We saw slow changes in the entertainment world. It wasn't until the 1990s that gay characters started to show up on TV, mostly as death figures. Many others, including Ellen DeGeneres, Neil Patrick Harris, Kristen Stewart, and others, were only able to live out loud because Hudson Nabors and Perkins had to live in pain and silence. He lived long enough to see that the truth was no longer seen as a danger before he died in 2017. He and other people like him didn't have to choose between their personality and their reputation. His friends and he left behind a lot of good things, even though he spent most of his time alone. But Jim Nabors doesn't share things to shock people. He shares them to give people who didn't have a voice before one. They used to have to live in a shell in Hollywood. But over time, they are slowly getting their rights back. Not with the mirror, but with the truth. Sign up to let us know if you think these stories should be told. Tell us what you think. To help important news keep getting to people who need them, all you have to do is like, share, or subscribe. Thanks for waiting until the end.